Have you ever wondered why we actually age? I mean, we're always told it's just, physical wear and tear, like an old car slowly breaking down over time. But what if that's entirely wrong? What if aging isn't some mechanical failure, but a software glitch? A systemic, progressive corruption right inside our fundamental biological source code? Today, we're popping the hood on the human machine. We're looking at the data and running a full-blown diagnostic on why our biological hardware eventually just fails us. Get ready, because we are going to completely redefine everything you thought you knew about getting older. What is up, everyone? I'm Legend, and welcome to today's Explainer. Now, you see this shot right here? This is literally my face when I first read through the source material for today's topic. My mind was completely blown. We're talking about the ultimate biological cheat code and the hidden, honestly slightly terrifying logic of our own cells. Before we get into all that, do me a huge favor. Take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on these mind-bending explainers. Okay, let's dive right in. Here's our system diagnostic report for today. We're going to start by redefining cellular aging as a biological system glitch. Then we'll break down the 4 fatal code errors corrupting our software. After that, we'll look at evolution's prime directive, how we accumulate genetic debt, what senescence really is, and finally, the rather tragic reality of our disposable hardware.
All right, Section 1. The biological system glitch, redefining cellular aging.
To truly wrap our heads around this glitch, we really have to stop thinking that our cells just wear out like the tread on old tires. Instead, it actually helps to look at biology through a computer science lens. Think about mapping these complex biological terms directly to their tech equivalents. Your DNA and chromatin, well, that's your database and your indexing system. Your mRNA and tRNA, that's your instruction set and the translation layer that compiles the code. And your mitochondria, that's basically your power supply. So when we age, it isn't just the hardware getting rusty. We're actually looking at corrupted software running on a failing system.
Moving on to Section 2, the 4 fatal code errors, or the vectors of corruption.
Okay, so the very first glitch is what's known as the packaging error. Inside the nucleus, the physical packaging of our DNA actually changes as the cell ages. Imagine a massive, perfectly organized database, right? But suddenly, the indexing system becomes completely corrupted. The data, the DNA, is still perfectly intact, sitting right there on the hard drive, but because the structural organization, which is called chromatin, has shifted, the cell just can't efficiently access or locate specific sectors of the code anymore. It searches for a file, hits an error message, and pumps out a faulty biological response.
Now, the second error is absolutely profound. This is the translation error. If DNA is the source code and mRNA is the instruction, well, tRNA is the translator. And as we get older, these tRNA translators start to mutate. If you look at the normal tRNA on the left, it perfectly translates instructions into beautiful, functional proteins. But compare that to the faulty tRNA on the right. It's trying its best to follow the instructions, but it's basically reading them through a cracked lens. The result? It churns out malformed, totally non-functional, or even highly toxic protein products that literally poison the system from the inside out.
Error number 3 is the execution error. This is where the actual act of reading the code becomes compromised. There's this enzyme called RNA polymerase II, and it's supposed to glide smoothly along the DNA strand to read our genes. But as the system ages, its movement gets erratic. Think of a record player where the needle just keeps violently skipping across the vinyl. This erratic reading causes widespread, catastrophic failures in gene expression. The system just completely loses its stability because this error rate compounds every single time the code is executed. Finally, we have the 4th error. Resource exhaustion. And wow, this one is particularly devastating in specialized cells, like our neurons. The mitochondria, acting as our cellular power supply, simply begin to fail. The energy production, or ATP, becomes super unstable. Imagine trying to run a high-end, insanely complex video game on an old laptop with a dying battery and a frayed power cord. The system just doesn't have the voltage required to run those high-level applications anymore, so it forcefully dials everything back. It retreats into a low-voltage, basic survival mode just to keep the lights on. Let's jump to Section 3, Evolution's Prime Directive, or the Architect's Flaw. So you might be wondering, why on earth did the architect leave in so many fatal flaws? Well, let's look at how this builds across a human lifespan. From years 0 to 15, we're in the growth phase. Here, evolutionary pressure is at its absolute maximum. Then, from 15 to 40, we hit reproductive maturity. This is peak genetic optimization. Any mutation that helps you survive and reproduce right here is pure gold. But look at what happens after 40.
the post-reproductive phase. Evolutionary optimization suddenly just stops caring entirely. There's literally zero maintenance budget because, from a strictly computational perspective, you've already completed the main loop. Let the cold, unfeeling logic of this realization sink in for a second. The source text says it best. In the architecture of life, there is no directive for longevity. There is only the directive for replication. Evolution doesn't care if you live to be 100. It really doesn't. It only cares that you live long enough to pass on the source code to a successor. Once that's done, you basically become redundant data.
Which brings us to Section 4, Accumulating Genetic Debt, and why the system crashes.
Just like in the tech world, where rushed code accrues what we call technical debt, biology does the exact same thing. See, our bodies have a finite maintenance budget for DNA repair and cellular cleanup. Because energy is a limited resource, the organism has to prioritize where that power actually goes, and it diverts almost all of it to growth and reproduction. Once that reproductive flag is set to true, long-term hardware integrity is massively deprioritized. I mean, why spend precious energy fixing hardware that isn't needed to reproduce anymore? Because of this, unfiltered mutations are just allowed to accumulate simply because they don't impact the next generation.
And this beautifully, or maybe tragically, illustrates the ultimate problem with our source code. We are basically running corrupted functions. Our DNA accrues massive amounts of technical debt passed down and compounded over millions of years. And how does evolution finally pay off this massive debt? It doesn't fix the code. No, it just discards the organism entirely and starts fresh with the next generation.
Section 5. Senescence as survival mode. This is the basic level.
When the corrupted code and the resource exhaustion finally overwhelm the hardware, the cell has to make a very tough choice. Now, a normal cell runs complex, energy-intensive processes smoothly, but when errors pile up, the cell enters what we call cellular senescence. It forcefully shuts down all non-essential services. It is exactly like a computer server throwing itself into safe mode during a massive power surge, dropping all external connections and high-level functions just to prevent a total catastrophic system crash.
This state is called the SASP phenotype. It's this primitive, low-powered defensive posture. The cell just stops trying to fix the massive genetic debt because the biological cost of error correction has become completely unaffordable. So it just retreats. It hunkers down. It stops functioning optimally and basically just survives, often secreting these nasty inflammatory signals in the process. It's the biological equivalent of a system hanging indefinitely on a loading screen.
Finally, Section 6, Disposable Hardware. The tragic conclusion.
All of this leads us to a stark realization from the source text. We are merely the disposable hardware used to carry the software forward. Once the handoff is complete, the hardware is permitted to degrade into obsolescence. The biological program just isn't designed for immortality. It's designed for persistence through replacement. We are literally just the temporary USB drives used to transfer the genetic files, and once those files are copied over, the drive is left to rust.
And that leaves us with a profound, honestly kind of haunting final thought. The true tragedy of human consciousness is that we've evolved the intelligence to actually read our own source code, to recognize our own biological expiration date, and yet we're currently trapped in an architecture that has absolutely zero interest in preventing our decay. So I leave you with this question to ponder today. As we map these glitches and finally understand the code, can our consciousness ever find a way to patch the system, or maybe escape this disposable biological hardware altogether? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and seriously, don't forget to subscribe. Keep questioning everything, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.